Summertime is grilling time in America, and although we reach peak grilling season in July around Independence Day, a significant portion of us grill all year round. Some swear by lump charcoal or briquettes, but for the majority, propane is the fuel of choice for grilling. Although charcoal grills are generally much cheaper, the wide range of quality and price in the propane grill market means that there's generally a good cost-effective option for most people. Propane itself isn't terribly expensive either, and its ubiquity and wide availability are part of what make it the preferred choice for grilling. But whether you've noticed it or not, the industry is changing, and it's not necessarily for the better. This is a standard 20-pound US propane cylinder. The 20-pound part refers to the maximum weight of compressed, liquefied propane gas it's meant to hold when full, equivalent to just over 9 kilos. Volumetrically, that's about 4.7 US gallons, or 17.8 liters of liquid. But for the sake of simplicity and nice round numbers, I'll just be referring to it as a 20-pound tank for the rest of this video. It's important to note that we're just talking about the weight of the propane here. An empty tank itself weighs about 17 pounds or 7.6 kilos to begin with, so the weight of the propane is on top of that. Now, traditionally, you'd buy your own empty tanks and have them filled as needed at a local business that sells propane. In fact, this practice never really went away, and you can still do it, but what's much more prevalent today is the quote-unquote tank exchange. With a tank exchange program, you exchange an empty tank you own, along with a reasonable seeming amount of money, for another full tank which you'll now own. Importantly, and contrary to casual appearances, this does not constitute any kind of consignment or deposit program. Effectively, every time you buy the propane, you give up the ownership of one tank and take ownership of another. None of these companies care where your empty tank came from. They'll simply inspect, recertify if needed, refill, and slap their own label on it. They're all also willing to sell you a full tank outright with no exchange, at significantly higher expense of course. The Walmart near me sells Blue Rhino exchanges for $20 and full tanks for $54. While Stop & Shop has them priced at $25 and $80 respectively. Shaw's, on the other hand, sells Amerigas exchanges for $21, with full tanks costing $65. But there's at least one thing that they're all hoping you don't notice. Right there in the fine print, 15 pounds. These tanks all contain just 15 pounds of propane. But how can that be? Well, just as shrinkflation has affected everything else in the consumer space, a pound of coffee is no longer a pound, and 20 pounds of propane is no longer 20 pounds. Companies like Blue Rhino say publicly that this is about safety, arguing that it's a reasonable allowance for expansion and contraction due to temperature changes, and prevents the accidental discharge of propane gas from the overpressure protection valve. The reality, though, is that these tanks are intended to hold 20 pounds of propane from the start, with ambient temperature and pressure fluctuations already considered in the engineering and design of the tanks. What it really boils down to is that these companies operate like modern-day swindlers. In fact, multiple class action lawsuits against them are ongoing. Blue Rhino, for example, who've always underfilled their tanks to some degree, in recent years came under fire for quietly reducing the amount from 17 pounds to 15 pounds with no corresponding reduction in price. Assuming you're okay with getting 25% less propane than you probably thought you were paying for, you should also consider the age and condition of the tanks. Every tank has a date of manufacture among all that information stamped on the collar. It's usually in the format month, year, so June 2025 in this example. Every tank is good for 12 years from that date, after which it can be recertified for a few dollars to extend its life by 5 years at a time. Recertification involves inspecting and pressure testing the tank to ensure it's still in proper working order, and it can be done at some but not all propane dealers. But the question is this: would you give away a brand new tank that you just bought in exchange for one with only a couple of years left on it? Or worse yet, one that's already expired? Of course you wouldn't. Just like you wouldn't trade a new Ferrari for a beat-up Chevy just to buy a tank of gas. The solution here is simple. Buy your own tanks and actual refills, and steer clear of these tank exchange prog scams. National retailers like Tractor Supply Company and U-Haul typically refill propane at their locations, and even many local hardware store chains like those affiliated with Ace and True Value both stock empty tanks and provide refills at prices far more reasonable than a tank exchange, especially when considering they don't short you a quarter of your purchase. If you're in a pinch, a tank exchange may be your only option, so the least you can do is be smart about it. Be polite and ask to find a tank with as recent a manufacture date as possible. The attendant usually won't care if you don't take too long. This is also a great way to offload an expired tank for one that's still got a good amount of life left in it, especially if you can't find anywhere in your area that performs tank recertifications. At the end of the day, it's your choice how you buy your propane, and sometimes it's more about convenience than it is cost, and that's okay too, as long as you're informed about what you're getting into. Grill smart this summer, folks. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video and maybe learned a little something. If so, then I'd appreciate it if you took a second to give it a thumbs up, or a thumbs down if you hated it. I also hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel if you're not already for more new stuff all the time. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.